Family is supposed to be the people who lift you up, bring you joy, and stand by your side through thick and thin. But let me tell you, at 65 years old, I've learned that not every family member deserves a place in your life. Some bring nothing but pain, stress, and negativity. And as hard as it is to admit, sometimes the best thing you can do for your own well-being is to walk away. Stick around until the end because I'll share the one life-changing realization that finally gave me the courage to let go, and why it's made me happier and healthier than ever before. Letting go of a family member isn't like ending a friendship or quitting a job. It's far more complicated because we're taught from a young age that family is everything. Family comes first, they say. But what happens when putting family first means putting yourself last? For years, I wrestled with this question. There were moments when I thought, maybe I'm being too sensitive, or this is just how they are. I convinced myself that if I tried harder, communicated better, or simply ignored their hurtful behavior, things would improve. But the truth is, some relationships don't get better no matter how much effort you put in. Toxic people thrive on control and manipulation, and when they're family, they often know exactly how to push your buttons. They know your insecurities, your weak spots, and your sense of obligation, and they use that knowledge to keep you tied to them. The hardest part is the guilt. Guilt over the idea of walking away, guilt over what other people might think, and guilt over the belief that you're somehow betraying your family. For me, it felt like an emotional tug-of-war. On one side was my desire to protect myself and find peace, on the other was the pressure to keep the relationship going at any cost. I spent years stuck in that middle ground, too afraid to take a stand. And let me tell you, it's exhausting. You end up sacrificing your happiness, your health, and even your self-worth just to maintain a relationship that doesn't nurture you. That's when I started to realize, something had to change. My wake-up call came during a family dinner, one of those gatherings where everyone was supposed to come together and enjoy each other's company. But with this particular relative, it was never that simple. That night, the digs started early. Little comments about my weight, how I was handling my finances, and even my parenting decisions. At first, I tried to laugh it off, as I always had. But as the evening went on, the remarks got nastier, and suddenly, all eyes were on me, waiting for my reaction. It was humiliating. I felt like a child being scolded, not a 65-year-old who had lived a full, respectable life. But what hurt more than their words was the realization that I had let this happen. I had allowed this person to treat me this way for years, and I had excused it time and time again because they were family. That night, I went home and couldn't sleep. I kept replaying their words in my head, wondering what I'd done to deserve such treatment. Then it hit me like a ton of bricks, I didn't deserve it. No one does. I'd been giving this person the benefit of the doubt for years, hoping they'd change, but they hadn't. And they probably never would. I realized that my desire to keep the peace was costing me my own peace of mind. I was living in a constant state of stress and anxiety because I was afraid of what would happen if I stood up for myself. And the saddest part? I'd been sacrificing my happiness to maintain a relationship that didn't bring me any joy. That night, I made a decision. I promised myself I wouldn't let this person have that kind of power over me anymore. It wasn't an easy decision, and I knew it would come with consequences. But I also knew it was the only way to reclaim my life and my peace. Toxic relationships don't just affect you emotionally, they take a toll on your entire well-being, and for me, it showed up in ways I didn't even realize at first. I'd feel drained after every interaction with certain family members. It wasn't just sadness or frustration, it was like they sucked all the energy out of me. I'd find myself replaying conversations in my head, obsessing over their words, and wondering what I could have done differently. This mental exhaustion spilled over into other areas of my life, making me irritable and less present with the people who actually cared about me. But it didn't stop there. The stress these relationships caused started showing up physically. My sleep became restless. I'd lie awake at night, my heart racing with anxiety. Over time, I noticed my blood pressure creeping up, and I started experiencing tension headaches more frequently. At first, I thought it was just part of getting older, but the truth was, these toxic relationships were weighing heavily on my health. And then there's the emotional impact. Toxic relationships chip away at your self-esteem. Every jab, every guilt trip, every dismissive comment plants seeds of self-doubt. After years of enduring this, I started questioning my worth. I felt like I could never do enough to please them or earn their approval, and that constant need for validation became a vicious cycle. Here's the thing, stress like this doesn't just make you feel bad, it can actually shorten your life. Studies have shown that chronic stress can lead to serious health issues, like heart disease, weakened immunity, and even cognitive decline. And when you think about it, why should we spend our golden years, the years we've worked so hard to enjoy, letting someone else's negativity rob us of our health and happiness? Realizing this was a wake-up call for me. I couldn't change how they treated me, but I could change how much access I gave them to my life. And once I understood that my well-being had to come first, everything started to shift. Now, let me be honest with you, deciding to let go of a toxic family member was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's not just about cutting ties, it's about letting go of the idea of what that relationship could have been. For years, I held on to the hope that things would get better. I thought, maybe if I try harder, they'll change. Or, maybe if I explain how much their behavior hurts me, they'll finally understand. But after countless attempts and endless disappointment, I had to accept the truth. Some people are not willing to change, no matter how much you want them to. The turning point for me was realizing that I was not responsible for their actions or their happiness. I couldn't control how they behaved, but I could control how much space I allowed them to take up in my life. And as difficult as it was, I knew I had to choose myself for once. At first, I set boundaries. I stopped answering every phone call and limited the time I spent at family gatherings. But the pushback came quickly. They tried to guilt me, saying things like, "You're being selfish," or, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" And for a moment, I almost gave in. But then I asked myself, what have they really done for me? Had they ever supported me when I needed it? Had they ever apologized for their hurtful behavior? The answer was no. And that's when I realized, walking away wasn't about punishing them. It was about protecting myself. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving them or wishing them well. For me, it meant acknowledging that their behavior wasn't something I could change and deciding that my peace was more important than their approval. Once I made that decision, something incredible happened. I felt lighter. I started sleeping better. I had more energy for the people and activities that brought me joy. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Was it easy? No. There were moments when I doubted myself, and there were people who didn't understand my choice. But standing up for my well-being taught me the most valuable lesson of all: you don't owe anyone access to your life if they don't treat you with respect and kindness, even if they're family. Let me tell you something, when you decide to stand up for yourself, not everyone will applaud. In fact, some people will push back harder than you expect, and that includes family. When I started setting boundaries and distancing myself from certain relatives, the backlash was immediate. Phone calls went unanswered, invitations declined, and suddenly, I was the villain. I heard things like, "You're tearing the family apart," or, "How could you do this to us? We're supposed to stick together." At first, I felt like I'd made a mistake. The guilt came rushing back, and I started second-guessing my decision. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was overreacting. But then I realized something: their reaction wasn't about me, it was about them losing control. Toxic people often rely on guilt and manipulation to keep you in their circle. When you take that power away, they panic. They'll say or do anything to make you doubt yourself because your independence threatens the hold they've had over you for so long. Here's how I handled it. I stayed calm and stuck to my boundaries. When someone tried to guilt me, I responded with something simple, like, I'm making this decision for my own well-being. I didn't argue or defend myself because I knew I didn't owe anyone an explanation. And yes, there were tears, angry words, and a lot of silence. Some family members stopped talking to me entirely, which was painful, but also a relief. It made me realize how much of my energy I'd spent trying to maintain relationships that weren't truly reciprocal. The hardest part was dealing with other relatives who got caught in the middle. Some tried to fix things, urging me to make amends for the sake of family unity. I had to remind them, and myself, that reconciliation isn't possible unless both parties are willing to change. And in this case, I knew that wasn't going to happen. It wasn't easy, but I learned that you can't please everyone. The most important person to please is yourself. Letting go of toxic family relationships taught me lessons I wish I'd learned decades ago. First and foremost, I realized that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, respect, and mutual care. When I walked away from the people who drained me, I made room for relationships that nourished me. Friends who genuinely cared, neighbors who checked in, even casual acquaintances who offered more kindness in one conversation than I'd experienced from some family members in years. It was like stepping into a world I didn't know existed because I'd been so focused on the negativity. I also learned how important it is to trust yourself. For so long, I doubted my instincts. I told myself I was being overly sensitive or dramatic. But once I listened to that inner voice, the one telling me I deserved better, everything started to change. Most importantly, I learned that prioritizing your happiness isn't selfish, it's essential. We spend so much of our lives worrying about others, their opinions, their feelings, their needs. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, what about me? Letting go allowed me to rediscover who I am outside of those toxic relationships. I found peace, confidence, and a renewed sense of purpose. I started investing my energy into things that truly mattered, my health, my hobbies, and the people who uplift me. Now, when I look back, I don't feel anger or regret. I feel grateful. Grateful that I had the courage to make a change, and grateful for the life I've built since then. If there's one thing I'd want you to take away from my story, it's this: you deserve relationships that make you feel valued and loved. And if someone, even a family member, can't give you that, it's okay to let them go. Because at the end of the day, your peace is priceless. If you're watching this and struggling with a toxic family relationship, I want you to know it's okay to prioritize your happiness. It's okay to set boundaries. And yes, it's okay to walk away if that's what you need to do. Leave a comment and share your thoughts or experiences. I'd love to hear your story. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more conversations like this. Because at the end of the day, you deserve to live your life free from negativity, surrounded by love and support.